Hi everybody, I'm Ryan. Today we're going to talk about Living End, and specifically how to sideboard with Living End. We're going to look at the top 10 most popular decks in Modern, how to sideboard against each one of those 10 decks, and hopefully you can use that knowledge to kind of take and learn how to sideboard against the other decks in the format. Without further ado, let's jump into it. Oh my god, it's going to crash again. I hate Magic Online. So this is my Living End deck. I've already done a deck tech on it. You should check that out on the channel if you haven't yet to kind of understand how it plays and all of that stuff. The essential parts of it is we cycle a bunch of creatures to draw a bunch of cards and put them in the graveyard and then bring them back with Living End and win the game. The most popular deck in Modern is Creativity. Against Creativity, we're going to be bringing in Foundation Breaker and Force of Vigor. Now these do two separate things. Number one, the fear of Leyline of the Void, needs to always be there against Creativity. Some of them play Leyline of the Void. It's important to have answers to them, even if we're not sure. In addition, even if they don't play Leyline of the Void, we can make sure we have access to these cards just in case, but also, can take out Fable the Mirror Breaker, can take out treasure tokens. It does more than just deal with Leyline of the Void. And so, it can make it kind of harder to combo if you take out, the Fable the Mirror Breaker and the treasure tokens. So they're fine anyway. But we always need to make sure we live in fear. Now, what we're going to be siding out is a slightly different story. On the play, I like siding out of Subtlety and 3 striped with River Rinders. The reason for this, in case they do have the hate, it's really important that the cards that we are cycling, we're actually able to cast, right? Which is why we keep these cards in. Wake of Waves and Stripe with a Rinder are just way too much. And we can get out ahead of their Teferis, so this is totally fine on the play. On the draw, we do something a little bit different. On the draw, we're actually going to be siding in the 2 subtleties because it's really important Teferi doesn't get out ahead of our cards. And with a similar situation, we're going to be bringing out the cards that we have a really hard time casting. So we're going to finish it bringing out our playset of Stripe with a Winder and going to be bringing in 2 Wake of Waves. And that's how we sideboard on the draw against Creativity. The second most popular deck in Modern is Murktide. So blue-red Murktide. Against blue-red Murktide, we are obviously bringing in our Mystical Disputes, just so we can fight the counter war with them, and that is it. The rest of the cards don't really do anything. There's an argument for Endurance to be able to keep them off Murktide, but I'm not super worried about that. I'd rather answer it with a Living End. And because they're super grindy, I like siding out 1 Subtlety. There's no real creatures we're super afraid of, so I don't care about that. And just 1 Striped Riverwinder. It's okay to shave. We're going to be shaving these high-costed cyclers quite a bit. So sideboard against Murktide. Against Rhinos, our cascading nemesis. I'm a fan of siding in Mystical Disputes. We aren't going to realistically be able to counter their Crashing Footfalls, but being able to counter a Force of Negation or a Murktide Regent, which a lot of them play now, is pretty powerful, I think. And we're going to be siding out a Subtlety, just does nothing against the matchup, and again, a Striped Riverwinder, so that's how I sideboard against Rhinos. The 4th most popular deck is Scam. Against Scam, we are bringing in Leyline of Sanctity so they can't Grief or Thoughtseize us, because that is a total nightmare. We're going to be siding into Subtleties because we can actually stop the Scam if we are able to counter their Grief and or Fury. And we're going to be siding into Endurance, again, in an attempt to stop the Scam so that when the end dies, we can just Endurance them. Having multiple answers to the Scam, I think, is actually pretty powerful. Because when they Grief you, they can take Endurance, but have to leave Force of Negation, and then we kind of win. I'm not interested in returning cards to their hand or really spending any mana for spells at all, so I like shaving the Brazen Borrower. I also like shaving a Living End just because there's no real point in playing all the Living Ends. You do it once, you're going to win the game. And then we're going to be shaving these high-costed cards similar to for reasons we mentioned in the past. Oh god, am I crashing again? Oh man. Magic Online, why are you awful? Magic Online. I hate it here. And we're back. Okay. So again, we're going to side out a Brazen Borrower, Living End, and then be shaving these really high-costed homies. So that's sideboard against Scam. Stop from scamming us, and we scam them. The next most popular deck is Hammer Time. Against Hammer Time, we're going to bring in our Artifact and Enchantment Hate. And we're going to be bringing out Subtlety. Countering an Ornithopter, is not great. I mean, there are times when Subtlety is good, but I think it's really rare. The creatures are rarely what we're afraid of. We're also going to be shaving some Grief. The thing about Grief is that, it's really important that we just, really dig and then combo as fast as possible, and Grief doesn't really help with that. You can only afford to draw so many cards that don't say Cycling or Cascade on them. And then we're going to shave a Striped Riverwinder, and that is how we're going to sideboard against Hammer Time. The 6th most popular deck is the Mirror Match. In the Mirror Match, we are bringing in Leyline of the Void. We are bringing in Endurance. We're bringing in Leyline of Sanctity to stop our opponent's Endurances. We're going to be shaving a Living End ourselves, shaving a Subtlety, totally cutting Force of Negation, and cutting the Brazen Borrower. So the reason we're doing this sideboard is because of sort of how the matchup plays out. And this might be the first nuance in this sideboard guide. So first off, Force of Negation is only good in the face of Shardless Agent. That is literally it. That's the only time Force of Negation is good. Otherwise, they can Violent Outburst on your turn, and then Force of Negation does nothing. That's not where I want to be. Instead, what I want to do is maximize the fight over graveyards. So we're playing Leyline of Sanctity to stop Endurance from hitting our graveyard. A lot of decks play a 3rd or 4th Endurance, so like, we really got to be afraid of them. We're playing Leyline of the Void to stop our opponent's graveyard, and we're playing our own Endurance to stop our opponents from having a good graveyard. Because the thing about Living End is that we can't cast our Living End until our graveyard is better than theirs. And that's the game that we're trying to play here. That being said, we shave one of our Living Ends because we're not actually going to be casting that many Living Ends. I'm not worried about that. We're shaving Subtlety. It doesn't really do anything in the matchup. We're shaving our Force of Negations, like the reason we stated before, and we're shaving a Brazen Borrower. It doesn't really do anything. I think there's an argument for keeping Brazen Borrower in, just so you can cast it and start applying pressure. In that case, I can see like cutting a Riverwinder or Waker Waves or something like that, but I like taking it out. So that is just how I sideboard in the mirror match. The 7th most popular deck is 4/5 color Omnath. Against the Omnath deck, we're siding in Subtlety for obvious reasons. Like, Endurance is very good, Omnath is very good. Like, being able to stop our opponents from casting those spells feels really good. And we're going to be siding in Mystical Dispute, being able to counter these cards like Omnath and like Counterspell in the Counterspell version or Risen Reef in the Risen Reef version. Kind of stops our opponent from having their game plan, which we feel really good about. I'm not a fan of Brazen Borrower, just because everything is under the battlefield effects, and there's no point in returning anything, in my opinion. And we're trying to go really fast with this, so I actually like shaving on Waker Waves in this matchup, because it costs 2 mana instead of 1. And this is how I sideboard against Omnath. The 8th most popular deck is Amulet Titan. Against Amulet Titan, we are bringing in our Artifact Hate, obviously, and we are bringing in Subtleties. So Artifact Hate to stop the Amulet so they can't get us super, super quick, and Subtleties to be able to deal with Primeval Titan or Colossus, or sometimes Dryad or Azusa. That being said, we really like a lot of our flex cards here. I am going to shave a single Living End, because really one is all we really need for the most part. And because of speed, we are keeping in the Stripe Riverwinders, as many as we can, and shaving these other big guys. So that's how we sideboard against Titan. The 9th most popular deck is Burn. Against Burn, we are just trying to combo as fast as humanly possible. We obviously bring in Leyline of Sanctities to try to get those free wins. Whoops. But other than that, we are just all in on our combo. So we're bringing out everything that doesn't have to do with our combo in as biggest capacity as possible, and we can just try to kill faster than our opponent can, which is why we're even bringing out this Force of Negation. And this is how I sideboard against Burn. The 10th most popular deck and the final deck we are going to talk about is Yawgmoth. First off, we're bringing in Leyline of Sanctity. Leyline of Sanctity is amazing against Yawgmoth. It stops Endurance, Thoughtseize, Necromentia, and Blood Artists, which are just like all cards that are very good against us. However, if they play Zulaport Cutthroat, they can kill through a Leyline of Sanctity, so keep that in mind. We're bringing in Endurance to interrupt these Undying things. And we're bringing in the Subtleties. Subtlety being very strong against a creature deck that is centered around just a few creatures. I like siding out of Force of Negation. I think there's an argument for keeping it in, right? Because they're siding in Necromentias. Again, they have Court of Callings and stuff like that. But I think like the deck as a whole has a really easy time dealing with creatures anyway. You know, being able to wipe the board with everything but the bad Undying creatures kind of whenever we want, when we want a Living End. So I don't really care about them Court of Calling. Like, I'd rather deal with, you know, the spots of cards, like the Subtleties, you know, like when dealing with the graveyards with Endurance, especially when we can Living End and then Endurance after it undies to be able to stop all their stuff, which is really cool. Force of Negation is just good against so few cards besides, like, man, exactly Necromentia or Eldritch Evolution or Court of Calling. I also think Grief is pretty borderline, because you don't really want their creatures to be in the graveyard, but it's really important to get rid of opponents' endurances, so we need to make sure we keep that. And other than that, we like all these cards. Brazen Borrower helps interact with our opponent's creatures and whatnot, and so we're just going to cut some of the Riverwinders to finish out the sideboards. So I sideboard against Yawgmoth. Augie! So if you like this video and want to see more sideboard guides like this, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. As always, thank you so much for watching. Check out the Twitch, please. I stream most nights. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.